That day, Zuri had gone to visit the prisons, her high heel shoes clicking loudly on the ground. Zuri was one of the most renowned lawyers in Nairobi. People respected her a lot, not just because she cared for poor people, but because of her intelligence and wisdom. Zuri had promised herself to always visit the prisons as long as she was alive because that was the only way she would help people, especially people who couldn't afford legal services. It was Zuri's first time at Graffy prison. She had traveled to a nearby town for a meeting with one of her high profile clients and decided to pay a visit to that prison, just in case there was someone she could help. Graffy prisons felt like every other prison she had visited. The high gates, the loud voices of guards quarreling, and the silent whispers of prisoners. As she was walking through the cells, accompanied by the prison warden, directing her, she heard someone shouting her name. Zuri! Zuri, look! I'm here! She turned quickly, surprised. Her heart skipped when she saw who it was. Behind bars was her mother, her own mother, Nia. She looked different, pale, tired, and upset. Mama, Zuri called out softly. Nia started crying. Yes, it's me, Zuri. Please, please help me. Many years ago, in the beautiful city of Nairobi, there lived a young woman named Nia. She was beautiful, intelligent, and in her early 20s. Nia worked as a banker at one of Nairobi's well-known banks, often spending long hours at her job. One morning, as Nia was walking to work, she accidentally dropped her purse. A man named Wangi saw it fall, quickly picked it up and handed it back to her with a friendly smile. They began chatting and soon discovered they enjoyed each other's company. Their friendship started to blossom. Wangi was a charming and intelligent engineer who had recently moved into Nia's neighborhood to oversee a building project nearby. He was always cheerful and funny, brightening Nia's days whenever they spent the time together. His kindness and gentle nature drew Nia closer to him, and soon their friendship turned into something deeper. Nia began to trust Wangi completely. She believed in his words and sincerity, and eventually they started dating. She felt as though she had finally found someone special, someone who truly cared about her. However, shortly after, Nia discovered she was pregnant. Filled with excitement, she thought sharing this news with Mwangi would strengthen their bond. But when she told him, Mwangi's reaction was harsh and unexpected. I can't be responsible for that thing. Mwangi snapped angrily. You better go and find who really got you pregnant because it can't be me. Without listening to any explanation, he pushed Nia out of his house. Nia was devastated, feeling hopeless. She tried every possible way to get rid of the pregnancy, but none of her attempts succeeded. Desperate and heartbroken, she tried contacting Mwangi again, pleading for help. But Mwangi refused to listen, eventually blocking her number completely. Not long after, Nia learned an even more painful truth. Mwangi had hidden deep secrets from her during their relationship. He had another family, children, and a beautiful wife in another city. Everything he had told Nia was a lie from the very beginning. Nia was crushed by this betrayal. All her life, she had struggled alone, carefully building her independence until Mwangi entered her life and shattered everything she had worked for. The pain she felt turned into deep anger and bitterness, especially toward the unborn child she carried, who seemed a constant reminder of Mwangi's betrayal. When the baby was born, she named her Zuri. And even though Zuri was beautiful and innocent, Nia found it difficult to love her. Every glance at her reminded Nia of the man who deceived and hurt her so deeply. As Zuri grew, Nia continued to distance herself. She worked in a bank and was rarely at home, leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. She hired maids to care for Zuri and hardly spent any meaningful time with her daughter. On weekends, when Nia was around, Zuri was expected to sit quietly in her room and never come out unless she was called. The rules in the house were clear and strict. Zuri was never allowed to enter her mother's room without permission. She had to address her mother as auntie, and she couldn't take anything without first asking. Zuri often felt isolated and confused by her mother's coldness. Whenever she complained or tried to express how lonely she felt, Nia would remind her harshly about her father who had abandoned them. I am working so hard so you can have food to eat and a roof over your head. Don't be ungrateful, Nia would tell her family. At school, Zuri listened quietly as her classmates happily shared stories of how their mothers would comfort them, especially when they are sick. They talked about hugs and kind words. Zuri wished deeply for the same comfort. One day, when Zuri was 6 years old, she felt particularly sick. Remembering her classmates' words, she quietly entered Naya's room, hoping the softness of the bed would make her feel better. She lay down, comforted by the sweet scent of her mother's perfume, and soon she drifted into sleep. But when Nia came home and found Zuri asleep in her bed, her anger exploded. Without a word, she struck Zuri repeatedly until one of the little girl's milk teeth fell out. Zuri ran away crying, heartbroken and deeply hurt. Even in her hurt, Naya never apologized nor came to hug her. When Zuri turned 11, Naya announced she was sending her to boarding school. Staying in this home has spoiled you. You will be going to a boarding school, Naya said coldly, making it clear that Zuri had no say in the matter. Boarding school was hard for Zuri. Throughout the years she spent there, her mother never visited or sent anything on visiting days, leaving her feeling more abandoned and forgotten than ever. One Saturday morning, Zuri was now 14. She finally gathered enough courage to talk to her mother. Nia was sitting quietly in the living room, scrolling through her phone. Zuri took a deep breath and stepped forward. Auntie, she said softly, her voice trembling, why do you hate me so much? Nia immediately stopped scrolling, her expression hardening as she looked up sharply. Hate you? Every time I look at you, I see your father. You look just like him. You look just like that wicked man who deceived me, lied to me and abandoned me to go be with his family. Do you have any idea how much pain you've brought into my life just by looking like him? Be grateful. Be grateful that I haven't abandoned you like he did. I have given you food, clothing, shelter, education. Do not expect anything more from me. And without another word, Nia returned to her phone, leaving Zuri standing alone, hurt and heartbroken. Understanding clearly that no matter what she did, she would never receive the love she desperately craved. When Zuri returned back to the boarding school that year, Zuri met Aisha, a warm and kind-hearted girl who quickly became her best friend and bunkmate. One visiting day, Aisha introduced her to her mother, Madam Nala. She heard Zuri's story and her heart went out to the young girl. She made sure that on visiting days, she regularly brought food, drinks and gifts for both Aisha and Zuri. She showed Zuri genuine care and affection, and before long, Aisha and Zuri became inseparable like sisters. As graduation approached, Aisha's mother took Zuri's hands warmly and said, you always have a place with us, my dear Zuri. You are welcome in our home anytime, any day. Meanwhile, Zuri noticed that her mother Nia had become involved with another man named Gerald. This new development sparked feelings of curiosity and unease within her, leaving her wondering what changes it might bring to her already fragile relationship with her mother. After Zuri graduated from secondary school, she waited for university admission while living in her mother's house. During this time, Nia and Gerald's relationship grew stronger and soon they got married. They moved out of their modest two-bedroom apartment into Gerald's mansion. Gerald was wealthy, but no one truly understood how he made his money. Whenever someone asked about his job, he would casually say, "I work online." Yet every night, Gerald left the house and would only return early in the morning. One afternoon, Zuri overheard Gerald complaining to Naya about her presence. His voice was harsh and impatient. "You never told me you had a daughter before we got serious," Gerald complained. "I don't want a stepdaughter. You should better take her out of here. She should leave." Zuri felt deeply hurt by his words. She was used to being alone and tried her best to stay out of his way. On weekends, when her mother and Gerald were home, Zuri quietly stayed in her room, and she rarely left her room unless absolutely necessary, trying to remain invisible in the house. One afternoon, while preparing a meal, Zuri overheard Gerald talking quietly on the phone. Curiosity drew her close to the door as she listened carefully. "Tonight is perfect," Gerald whispered urgently. "Make sure everything is ready. Once we get there, we'll take the money and disappear." Zuri's heart pounded in her chest. Gerald was planning something wrong, something dangerous. Feeling frightened but determined, she decided to tell her mother what she heard, hoping Naya would finally listen to her. "Mama," she said quietly later that evening, "I heard Gerald saying something terrible. It might be that he wants to steal something tonight." Naya's reaction shocked Zuri. Her mother became very angry. Her voice was sharp and hurtful. "You better stop causing trouble, Zuri. Gerald has been nothing but kind to you and me. You should be grateful that he's allowed you to even stay here this long." But later that day, when Gerald came home, Naya confronted him about Zuri's words. He exploded in anger. "I've had enough of this your nonsense daughter. It's either she leaves my house today or it's over between us," he shouted furiously. Fearing losing Gerald, Naya quickly packed Zuri's things and sent her out of the house without hesitation. "After all, you are over 16 years. Go out of this place and go and find something better for yourself." Zuri stood on the street, tears streaming down her face, feeling abandoned yet again. Alone and frightened, she dialed Aisha's number with trembling hands. "Aisha," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I have nowhere else to go. Please, my mother just chased me out of the house." Without hesitation, Aisha and her mother warmly welcomed Zuri into their home, promising she would always have a safe place with them. Zuri felt comforted and safe for the first time in her life. Meanwhile, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that her mother's life with Mr. Gerald was heading towards disaster. Living with Aisha and her mother brought a new kind of peace and happiness into Zuri's life. For the very first time in her life, she experienced the warmth and comfort of a loving family. Every day in Aisha's home felt safe, filled with affection and care that Zuri had always longed for but never received from her own mother. Slowly, the deep wounds from her past began to heal. Aisha's mother treated Zuri like her own daughter, never making her feel different or unwanted. When Zuri felt sad or doubtful, she would comfort her gently and encourage her to believe in herself. The kindness and warmth Zuri received filled her heart with gratitude and hope. As teenagers, Zuri and Aisha grew even closer. Their friendship deepened into sisterhood, built on trust, laughter, and unwavering support for each other. Soon, they both received admission letters from a prestigious university abroad. They were awarded scholarships to study. Aisha chose to study business management, while Zuri pursued her dream to study law. The girls worked very hard and eventually graduated with excellent grades. Soon after their graduation, they both secured promising jobs. Zuri became a lawyer known for her intelligence, compassion, and dedication to justice. Her reputation quickly grew, making her one of the most respected lawyers in Nairobi upon returning home. Despite her success, Zuri often thought about her mother Nia. Memories from her childhood, however, made it difficult for her to forgive her fully. Every time she remembered the harshness, neglect, and pain, her heart felt very heavy. Zuri found comfort in using her legal skills to help others, especially those who couldn't afford legal fees. She regularly visited prisons around Nairobi, offering free legal aid to poor and wrongly accused inmates. Every time she stepped into those prisons, she remembered her past and used her experiences to drive her mission of bringing hope and justice to others. As much as she blossomed into a strong, independent and successful young woman, the thought of her mother still lingered in her mind. Yet, the painful memories held her back, making it difficult for her to open up to forgiveness. But deep down, Zuri knew she would eventually have to face those memories and perhaps her mother again. The day Zuri had gone to visit prisons, her high heeled shoes clicking loudly on the ground. Zuri was now one of the most renowned lawyers in Nairobi. It was Zuri's first time at graphic prisons. She had traveled to a nearby town for a meeting with one of her high-profile clients and decided to pay a visit to that prison, just in case there was someone she could help. Graphic prisons felt like every other prison she had visited. The high gates, the loud voices of guards quarreling, and the silent whispers of prisoners. As she was walking through the cells accompanied by the prison warden directing her, she heard someone shouting her name. "Zuri! Zuri, look! I'm here!" She turned quickly, surprised. Her heart skipped when she saw who it was. Behind bars was her mother, her own mother, Naya. She looked different, pale, tired and upset. "Mama," Zuri asked softly. Zuri's heart raced as she stared at her mother behind the bars of graphic prison. The woman before her looked thin, exhausted, and entirely different from the proud and distant mother she remembered. "Zuri," Naya whispered softly, her voice breaking with emotion. "I never thought you'd be the one standing here today. Thank you so much for coming." Zuri took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. "Mama, how did this happen to you? How are you?" Tears rolled down her face as she spoke. "It's Gerald. He deceived me, Zuri. Gerald was involved in a serious fraud. I had no idea. One day, he just disappeared. Then suddenly the police came to the mansion and arrested me. Victims mentioned my name because Gerald had used accounts under my name. I've been here for 5 years now with nobody to come to my rescue, and Gerald is nowhere to be found." Zuri felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, sadness, and lingering resentment. She wanted to tell her, "I told you so," but she held herself. But still, she couldn't walk away from her mother's situation. Despite the pain of her childhood, she knew she needed help and she was going to give it to her. "Hold on, Mama," Zuri said firmly, her voice strong yet gentle. "I will try my best to get you out of here," she promised. And true to her words, she kept her promise. For months, Zuri tirelessly fought for her mother's freedom. She spent endless hours collecting evidence, preparing documents, and attending court hearings. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Naya was granted her release. When Naya stepped out of the prison, Zuri was waiting. Without a word, she drove her mother home to her comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. Naya felt relieved but uncertain as she looked around. "Thank you so much for taking me in, Zuri," Naya said cautiously, her voice full of hope. Zuri's eyes were cool and distant as she responded. "Mama, this is my home and you're welcome to stay. But I want you to understand clearly, I don't owe you any emotional relationship. Be grateful you have food and shelter, just as you once told me. Don't expect more from me." Naya's heart sank. She knew those words well. She had spoken them herself years ago. Now, they cut deeply, reminding her vividly of the emotional scars she had inflicted upon her daughter. Life in Zuri's home continued, filled with silence and polite but cold interactions. Naya often watched quietly as Aisha's mother visited regularly. Each time Aisha's mother would warmly embrace Zuri, showering her with genuine affection, laughter, and motherly love. Seeing this, Naya felt deep regret and insecurity growing within her. One evening, Naya finally gathered the courage to approach Zuri. "Please, Zuri," she pleaded softly. "Forgive me. I was wrong. I hurt you deeply and I regret every single thing I did every day. Zuri's gaze was steady but soft. Mama, I've forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I can't pretend the past didn't happen. You have my forgiveness, but I cannot give you the emotional bond you seek. It was a long time ago that it got lost. As months passed, Zuri announced her engagement. Preparations for the wedding filled the house with excitement and joy. On the wedding day, Nia quietly took a seat far in the back, her heart heavy with sorrow. When the time came for speeches, Zuri stood gracefully, looking radiant in her beautiful gown. She turned towards Aisha's mother and reached out, holding her gently. Today, Zuri spoke warmly, tears shimmering in her eyes. I want everyone to know about the extraordinary woman who truly raised me. She loved me unconditionally, comforted me when I was broken, and guided me when I was lost. She is my real mother, the mother my heart chose. Thank you for everything, Mama. As the room burst into applause, Naya silently wiped away tears of her deep regret. The pain of realizing how much she had missed overwhelmed her completely. Quietly, she stood and left the wedding venue, finally understanding the depth of her daughter's pain. Outside beneath the clear starry night, Naya made silent promise to herself to carry this lesson of loss and regret forever. And as Zuri embraced her new life, she felt lighter than ever, ready to move forward in love and hope, knowing she had found true happiness and genuine family at last. The end. Thank you so much for joining us through Zuri's powerful and moving story. It has undoubtedly left us with valuable lessons and deep emotions. Zuri's life highlights the lasting impact our words and actions have on people around us, especially those we should love and respect. Her childhood, filled with neglect and emotional wounds, emphasizes that love is not merely providing food and shelter, but also offering warmth, kindness, and emotional security. Her remarkable journey also showcases resilience and the strength of forgiveness. Despite her past hardships, Zuri rose above her circumstances, using her pain as motivation to help others, those in prisons. Even when faced with her mother's plea, Zuri demonstrated grace, showing that forgiveness can heal even if the scars remain. Now, I would like to hear from you. Do you think Zuri was right in treating her mother the same way she had been treated? Please share your thoughts in the comment section. We would love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more engaging stories and valuable life lessons like this one. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next story. Bye.